Good day to be alive. Come to think of it, every day's a good day to be alive.
Hi, thanks for joining us for another edition of Chronic Conversations. I'm Jerry Leonard, and I'm here with the guys from Scare Talk, a podcast about horror movies, and that's what we plan on talking about tonight. Guys, could you introduce each one of yourselves and tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Okay, I'm going first. I'm Katrina. I'm the newest member of the podcast. I'll let Danny do the role of telling about the podcast. So,
All
Joel,
right.
It's your turn.
Oh, it's mine. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as Katrina said, I'm Joel. Me and Danny were roommates for 7 years, and just decided one day to do this podcast. So there's slightly more to the story than that, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the gist of that. So,
Y'all just share a love of horror movies? Is that what got it started, or what was the...
We worked. We first met working at Hollywood Video back in the day, and
So awesome.
yeah. And
Disclaimer, kids, if you're under a certain age, Hollywood Video was a place we bought these physical things that we had to stick in something else to. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That a whole different rabbit trail to explain.
it was a store that you'd actually rent movies and buy movies at. So, well, you can still buy movies places, but you can't.
Which
rent them
streamer was that
anywhere.
again, dude?
Way back in the day,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Hollywood Video.
Yeah.
One of the
But,
greatest memories is scouring those shelves for the horror movies.
Yeah.
The latest.
Yep. Yeah. People these days will never know what that's like, but
No,
it
or
was
the horror of getting to one and finding out that it's already been
all
rented.
rented out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Harassing
Yeah.
the workers. Could you check in the back? Check under a
Uh-huh.
shelf, check out in the car. Just check everywhere. Are you sure nobody turned it in yet?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the joys of working there is we got the movies like a week in advance, so we didn't have that issue when we worked there.
So
but
cool.
but yeah,
What a great
renting
friendship.
from there is different. All right.
Well, I'm Danny. So I'm the other guy Joel's talking about.
Hello there.
That's right.
We worked at Hollywood Video for a while together, and remained friends. Talked about horror movies all the time, and decided, let's record what we talk about, and that's how it started. And then Katrina was joining us for episodes here and there. And
Sometimes I have really strong opinions, so that's
Yeah.
kind of how it started. And I'm his wife. We didn't say that.
It makes for some interesting podcast, for sure.
Yeah.
So
Talk-
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I do remember when it happened. I was actually listening to a podcast, or I don't remember who I was listening to, but I was like, I think I could do that. I think I could do that sometime. It'd be kind of fun to do. And then literally a day or two later, Danny texted me. He was like, "You want to do a podcast?" Yeah. You want to start a podcast? So yeah, that was my experience with that. But I'm like,
That's
yeah.
how connected these guys have all
Yeah. Yeah.
2020. That's when we
That's
started.
great though. It's hard in nowadays and time to have that kind of friendship or any kind of business relationship or any kind of relationship. They crumble and fall apart pretty easily. So it's great to have somebody, especially with those same kind of shared interests, that you can start something like that with. I know a lot of I've gotten into writing the shorts and doing the horror shorts, and my wife has discovered she enjoys doing those and acting on those. So it's another fun way to get to spend time with somebody and have that quality time on something that you both enjoy so much. It's like I was telling them earlier, first thing we're going to do when this show is over is decide what scary movie we're watching, because that's
nice.
what we do. And I told them I'm a full range. I love just about anything from older ones to new ones. I've seen from the silent films, the vampire, all the way up to the newest ones. Is there any the beautiful thing? So my favorite thing about horror movies is that there's no limit. It's almost like they have no box. They're the genre that has no box. They can add sci-fi, humor, romance, you name it. If there's a subgenre, it can be tacked on, and it can be any or all those things in the same film. What kind of movies do you prefer, and what is your favorite thing about horror movies?
Oh man. Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
My favorite like subgenre is slashers. I just think they're so much fun. And within slashers, you can have some humor for sure, but they've, the most iconic characters have come from slashers, and so
Right.
I always like a good slasher, even if it's not good. I'm probably still going to enjoy it a little bit. So I think
Yes.
slashers are.
I loved when they first came out too, because even though they were slashers, a lot of them were such suspense thrillers at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, mixing genres, it just blends so well. I also enjoyed those. What about you, Joel?
My favorite subgenre of horror is probably psychological horror. One of my favorite horror movies, and one of Danny's also. If you haven't watched this, I think it's on Netflix. You need to check it out. Is Identity.
Does not sound familiar, so I will have to check that out for sure.
It's an amazing movie. It's got a really good cast too. John Cusack and Ray Liotta. It's a
1408.
Oh yeah. 1408 is another amazing movie. He really knows how to pick his horror movies, but yeah. So it's a psychological horror movie that's got like 3 twists in the movie, and it's
Nice.
It's a really good one. But also like my love of horror went back to like Alfred Hitchcock days.
Nice.
He was like the master of suspense, not necessarily horror, but his movies like Psycho, like, they say it's like the first slasher, one of the first slashers ever, even though a couple people actually died in the movie. But so,
Gotta get the numbers up, son.
Yeah, exactly. Which that character does. He's had like 4 sequels. So, but yeah, it's just like the suspense, I think, is another part of horror that I absolutely love. So, but yeah, psychological horror is my favorite.
What about you, Katrina?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that I pair more with Joel of liking the psychological horror. And my favorite thing that I've been really enjoying with horror more recently is seeing the level of how they're starting to address like trauma and different mental health issues within the horror genre. I have really been enjoying that a lot. And then looking back on like older movies, I'm like, well, actually, they've been addressing this for a long time. I think we're just starting to notice it now more.
Yeah, you get to a certain age, I think, and all of a sudden you start to see the subplots and the beautiful little nuggets that were in there that you never. So it's like you get to really enjoy the movie.
It becomes a brand new movie. Yeah. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things to watch. I didn't used to like horror much. Definitely not the slashers. But now I've grown to love them with this guy.
One of your favorite movies of last year was Terrifier 2. So
I know, I like this super over the top. If I'm gonna watch a slasher, like with it being over the top. I also really like when there's comedy in the horror movies.
I love levity because anything that in pro wrestling you call it a hope spot, but anything that brings down the expectations of what's about to happen right before it goes right back into something crazy. I love that. I love I like when people use them uniquely, but I don't hate on tropes at all. The tropes are what make horror movies so great to me. So, and people, it seems like people complain no matter what, like there's too many or not enough. What is the biggest thing do you see people complaining about when it comes to horror movies today that you're like, really? Why can't you just, kind of enjoy or kind of ridiculous thing? Because we got a lot of first world problems
Yeah.
What kind of things do you see or hear out there now that people complain about when it comes to horror movies? That because everybody's a critic nowadays, right? Everybody's good
Yeah.
character.
I would say for me, I think it's more of a recent thing. Well, I think it's on my mind because of The Exorcist Believer came out.
Mhm.
I think comparing, sequels or movies that are part of a franchise today releases compared to their, original films. I think a lot of horror fans do that, and I just don't find it to be fair. Just because it's not the same time. It's not, and sometimes these films were great because like by accident almost. Like it's not like you can recreate that. It's kind of a one-time deal. So that's probably the thing that's been annoying me most about critics with horror films is just the constant comparison. That
is one of the horrible things nowadays. I do love. It seems like they're getting. I guess the saying now is getting their flowers. It seems like horror movies are getting that because they're starting to generate the dollars. Do you think that is a good thing for a horror movie, or do you think it may eventually be like the Marvel universe and they just wear it out to where there's nothing interesting anymore?
So for me with that question, I really think that's, well, I do like when a movie gets makes a lot of money because then we can get sequels out of it and everything.
Right.
But horror is one of those genres of movies that doesn't need to have money thrown at it. Like you can make a really good horror movie for like $5 million and have it make, like the Paranormal Activity movies were like in the thousands, and those made hundreds of millions of and it's like that may have just been a one and done kind of thing, but I think all of the at least more than half of them were like still lower. Like the first one made over $100 million. They didn't throw 50 million at the sequel. Like they still kept it relatively small and just made more money off of it and made more sequels. After a certain point, you can stop making sequels, but it's like I do.
It also helps creativity, don't you think? Like if the less money you have, the more you have to kind of dig down within yourself to come up with things that. And I think that's what made a lot of the classics great too, is because they didn't have those budgets and they had to kind of deal. So it kind of helps today. I like the structure of how some of the companies are following that as well.
And it also depends on how they're using their money. I do know practical effects cost more than digital, so that's why they tend to go CGI with a lot of their stuff. If they put more of their money that they get into practical, I think horror will definitely come back as a genre, because people still talk about the 80s like it's the best decade of horror. Do we need a new
Tom Savini? Do we need a new production company that's just that production company that's even like John Carpenter? He was so bold because in The Thing he had decided to use practical effects and to show things that weren't normally shown, right? And that was part of the beauty of all of that. You would hope that maybe in the future that either one or two things are going to happen. CGI gets better, or they start putting some of that money, like you said, if it's you're making it for $4 million and $5 million and getting $100 million back, let's put some of that into practical effects. You think that's why sequels are always better than the first in that respect? Is it's always there's bigger, badder kills, more because they do have a little bit more budget, or do you think that's just a trope now that gets kind of followed?
So I think going to the CGI too, I think it's a matter of time too. Time and effort and energy that you have to put in if you're, you don't have to put in as much if you're doing CGI, but you have to put in more time, effort, and energy if you're doing practical effects. And I always get a little worried when a movie does really well with a lower budget, because then the next one's going to have a bigger budget, and what are they going to use that money on, And so I think sequels, yes, they're always bigger, but not always better. For that reason. Yeah.
What is there any out there that you would say, especially in the horror genre? Do you think there's any sequels that stand up to the original, or maybe even better?
I mean, I don't know if you. I know most people consider this franchise as a whole sci-fi, but the Alien movies, Aliens has always been known as like a better movie than Alien.
I always bring up Evil Dead.
She loves these
Yes.
men.
Yeah.
Evil Dead too.
Yeah.
We still prefer the first one over that one. But,
Not her.
You do.
Yeah.
Not me.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, to a lot of people, Evil Dead 2 was a better movie than the original.
Yeah. Terrifier 2.
I was gonna say Terrifier. I think Terrifier 2 isn't necessarily above, but it's right on level with Terrifier.
Oh, that's
Because you think so? Because well, the thing is though, Terrifier like was, I don't know, it like was something completely itself.
wild. Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
like there wasn't something else like it, and I don't know, maybe there was, but I don't feel like it.
Not that over the top.
I know, it was like it pushed all the limits. And
Yeah.
Terrifier 2, you already knew was going to push those limits. And so, but it added the story with the thing.
Mhm.
But I feel like Terrifier 2 wouldn't have been so amazing without Terrifier. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's they're still out.
I just think
Do you
it
think the
holds
third
up.
one will hold up? Do you think it'll?
I'm worried.
Yeah. So we saw. I don't know if you guys saw the teaser for that.
Yeah.
Haven't.
Okay.
Is that why we're worried because of the teaser we saw? I don't know.
Well, it's supposed to take place during Christmas rather
Right.
than Halloween. I don't know why they're choosing to go that route. I hope that there's a good reason for it, because Art the Clown definitely is a Halloween time type of villain in my mind. So I hope that there's like a good reason for it to be in Christmas, but it's also releasing in October. So
Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
I'm.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
it's very mysterious right now.
yeah.
It's our Halloween movie, but it's gonna be a Christmas movie. Like it's in the same week of Halloween, so
Yeah.
they typically only release one movie during that time, and that's your Halloween movie, and
Yeah.
that's gonna be it, and it's a Christmas movie, so it's like,
That's
what
weird.
are you doing?
We have a thing to where every holiday we watch the horror movie based on,
Yeah.
so we will watch Christmas horror movies, but again, it'll be at Christmas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Like we just started it, or Thanksgiving, because they have Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're excited for
Thanksgiving's
that
coming
one.
we'll be covering that one.
Christmas, we just watched Silent Night, Deadly Night.
That's actually a
get
good
that
one.
started. What is you guys' favorite holiday horror movie?
Halloween for me.
Well,
Well, if
okay,
we're
so
talking about holiday,
Halloween.
Like Halloween, yeah. But if you're talking about like Christmas time, like that season, it would
Yeah,
be-
and like any holiday,
Yeah.
our Santa has a Michael Myers mask, so we
nice.
every
Yeah, Halloween's my favorite of all time. So
Yeah.
as well.
My favorite Christmas one is a new one, the Mean One. Oh my gosh, that one was. I think that will be my all-time favorite Christmas horror movie.
Tell me about that one. I don't think I've heard about that one yet. The Mean One.
Yes, it's about that character that is the mean one.
It's a parody
Um,
of
Is it sort of like the Pooh thing? Like they turned it horror? Is
What was that?
it sort of like the Winnie the Pooh thing? They horrified
Kind
that
of.
with?
Kind of,
Yeah.
but done way much better than the Winnie the Pooh thing.
Okay.
They stuck to the story, which was so fun. They really used bits of the story, and then they had those. Well, and the person who plays the mean one is the same guy who plays Art the
Art.
Clown.
yeah.
And so he has so much theatrical, just like body language, his body language and his body acting. I don't remember the terminology. But for that, he is amazing with that. And it was such a fun movie because it was a movie that you can still feel that Christmas like fun. I'm gonna go see a Christmas movie, but then
Right.
it's a horror movie, and so it has that balance. I really loved it.
Yeah.
It has some
That's
comedy
one.
in it. It's pretty comedic, especially if you get the Dr. Seuss references and stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's really
I love those that do that. That take the kind of childhood things and horror them up. I like the way Blumhouse has done that with like Freaky and a couple of the Happy Death Day,
Yeah.
a couple of those. They
Mhm.
blend so well the true legends of the paths that those stories take and integrate in the horror. It's just that to me is creative genius. To be
Yeah.
able to take
Yeah.
that and convert it. What else is exciting you guys right now as far as what's upcoming with horror? We got a good season, it looks like, coming up next year as well, and still a few things I think left over this year. We just spoke about Thanksgiving coming out
Mhm.
in November.
As far as big movies go, I think that's the last one that's coming out this year.
I think it could be.
I don't think there's any. I mean, there's a Justin Long one coming out in December.
It comes out on Friday.
Oh, on Friday? It's a wonderful night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It does come out soon. But yeah, as far as December goes, I haven't really looked into it too much, but I don't think there's too much coming out at all. So
Nothing big, I don't think.
Thanksgiving. But like next year we've got what do we have next year? We have
Terrifier
Smile
3.
2, I think Terrifier 3. End of the year, that one.
And is Maxine gonna finally come out?
I
Because
hope
I
so.
am
When that one's coming
dying
out, we
for that
still
one.
have Salem's Lot to come out. It's supposed to be coming out on HBO Max. But
Yeah.
they still haven't said when.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few things floating around out there. I feel like.
Mhm.
The Strangers trilogy.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're getting
yeah.
the entire trilogy next year, which is crazy.
Yeah.
In theaters, so that's going to be. We should be getting the first one in like January, February, I would assume, if they're breaking it into like 4 months or something. But
What if they do like back-to-back weeks, like just
that
week?
they wouldn't make money from that. That wouldn't be very smart.
No, I know, but I'd love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That would be so cool.
Do the whole
it'd be,
Fear
like,
Street
fresh in
thing
your
for
mind,
Netflix.
Yeah.
Where they release one of those a week. Hopefully they do that again. That was fun. But yeah, Maxine, I think possibly.
What so far of the things that have been out that you reviewed of the newer things? What has been is there been a favorite movie amongst you, or is there argument when that comes to that as well, or how are we doing on that?
This year has been really crazy as far as the different types of horror movies that we've gotten.
All over the place.
It has been all over the place. So we're going to be doing a top 10 list at some point, probably in December. So that's going to be an interesting list to because I'm sure it's all going to be different. But for me, I think one of my favorites that came out this year has to be. There's a couple, but one of them is probably Saw 10. I actually really enjoyed that one. It's definitely one of the best of the Saw franchise. And
It's definitely got some great reviews.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You don't learn anything new from the character that we didn't know already, but whatever.
It's enjoyable, right?
There wasn't
Yeah.
much to learn.
Yeah, that's what
Well, yeah, there really
be
wasn't.
entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another one's probably Renfield. I absolutely love Renfield. That's gonna be high up on my list, I think.
Wow.
When we were talking about CGI and everything, that's when CGI is done right. When it's done, when it's not
It's getting there. They're getting better with it. Do you think there's a time where CGI will be just as acceptable as practical effects, or do you think practical effects just have that something to our eye that adds a ickiness that CGI can't really copy, almost like AI or something?
Yeah,
So
the latter.
yeah. So when it comes to CGI, in my opinion, as far as CGI blood goes, if the movie's already like out there and just ridiculous, I don't like Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill movies. I loved that over the top CGI blood that they used in that.
Right.
And that's kind of what I felt with Renfield. If it were a serious movie, that wouldn't have worked at all. You would need more practical, but it didn't take itself seriously. So go crazy with
So it
with
still
the
fits the
CGI
theme.
blood.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
as long
it
as
really-
it doesn't take away from it, which is the problem, especially that we're, like I said, we are getting better with CGI, but there's that point to where it's kind of distracting. I've seen animated cartoons. Roger Rabbit was better in some instances than some of the CGI you still see, but I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
We're getting more realistic with that anyway.
Well, and I think for me, the CGI stuff, like the gore and things and the blood, it's not too bad these days. But the CGI of like the characters is what ruins it for me. Like Pennywise when they were doing CGI with him, and like the Crooked Man in Conjuring 2.
Yeah, it's awful.
Some of that CGI when it's like, okay, this character is supposed to be scary, but it looks really fake, and it's like
a Casper effect.
Well, okay, you took me out of the movie. But if it's CGI blood, if there's blood spraying or whatever, it's not real. That doesn't bother me as much. So you can
just suspending your disbelief, right? Like
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say too, is like the feeling of like, because you can never be as scared of the new Pennywise as you are of the original Pennywise. Like that Pennywise is like a legit clown. Like
for some of the movies, at least for me, it's when you watch it as a kid, it had a different kind of scare factor. So those movies just seem scarier because maybe you think because we saw them as a kid, or were they scarier than the ones today?
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. And when looking at, like, if we stick with the Pennywise example, I think that there's a little of both, where part of what makes Pennywise so scary as in his original clown look is how clowns are scary because of the look that they have, where they have those unrealistic facial expressions, but where they are the actual facial expressions, where this new one has like this, drip down his face, and like it's not things that you're gonna really see. Sorry, our dog is over here.
No, more than welcome to be a part of the show.
Yeah. But
3 times for your favorite movie.
But the I think that he also and like the hair, like with it being the real wig, and like the nose and just
some small details.
The weird things about clowns, that clowns are just weird to look at. All of that is lost with doing that CGI look. But I think there is definitely an aspect of it's definitely scarier for me, of course, because I saw it as a kid. And so now I will forever know that phase.
You still have those, you still hold those emotions, you still can feel those same things, like certain sounds and things trigger things. Like I even remember what used to get me, what got me into horror movies. I remember being little, and before I was even allowed to watch them, hearing my mom and her friend talk about movies. They go see a scary movie, and they come home and talk about it, and I was fascinated hearing these things that went on. They seem so surreal. What is it initially that attracted each one of you to horror movies?
For me, I think I kind of got to agree with you. Maybe not my parents necessarily, but my friends, maybe at school and stuff, talking about specifically Scream. That was the first like real legit horror movie I think I saw. And it was a big deal, like if your parents let you watch it or not, and at that time that was like the thing to talk about. So, and I think it was perfect for me because I like a mystery too. So it was, a whodunit. It was a slasher. I ended up really liking
everything, and we needed another Freddy or Jason or Leatherface so bad at that time.
Yeah,
and Craven came through again.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think it was just that interest of like, this is kind of bad to watch. Are your parents gonna let you?
Right.
And, and then the mystery of it, and then that movie also had a lot to say about the movies that came before it. Like the horror genre. So I credit that movie a lot to where I gained my like love for horror films.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well. What about the rest of you?
I was trying to think of this because I think we've asked ourselves this question at some point, and I wasn't sure what my first horror movie ever was. Bringing up Alfred Hitchcock, I'm pretty sure Psycho was my first, or at least one of my first horror movies, and I think that's what kind of drew me into it. It's kind of a like beginner horror. Alfred Hitchcock.
It is. It's a good transition.
Yeah. From like show your kids this and like
may not want to start with Exorcist like I did.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't watch it. It wasn't the first movie I watched technically, but I heard it because I was hid behind my mom's back through 90% of that movie.
Nice.
I was at a friend's house watching it, but I do remember the sounds and how terrifying that was. And and every once in a while, I probably peek my head around because you got to see.
Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while, you gotta match what you're seeing with what you're hearing.
I honestly don't remember. I don't know what my first one was.
Yeah. Psycho. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Joel.
Psycho is definitely one of them. I didn't grow up with horror movies. My mom, I lived with my mom for the first half of my growing up years, I guess. I didn't move in with my dad till like I was already in high school. So my mom hated horror movies. I think she was the one that let me watch like Alfred Hitchcock movies. Maybe not Psycho, but like there are a couple other ones that were just straight suspense. Like Rope is my favorite of his movies. But so yeah, I think Psycho was my first. I didn't really get into it until I was like in high school. Because my dad liked horror movies, and so he'd rent movies, and so one of them I remember. I think it was I Still Know What You Did Last Summer was one of my first.
I still
not I Know What You Did.
No, I think it was I actually have a vivid memory of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. My dad rented it, and it was a Saturday night, and when it was over, I remember like the TV would go on immediately after you turn the VCR off, and SNL was on, and Jennifer Love Hewitt was actually the guest star.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and she did a duet with what was his name, Ben Willis, the killer of I Know You Did Last Summer. They did a duet together. And I was like, that was like immediately after watching that movie. So I was like, that's
funny.
So, so I have like that vivid memory of that movie. So I think it was early in my horror movie watching years, but yeah. So.
See, I the first movie I was allowed to watch was Scream. And I got to watch that on my 12th birthday for a sleepover. So I remember that, but I snuck watching movies when my brothers were watching. And so I saw Pennywise and was terrified to like go in the bathroom ever again for a while. And I had watched Fear without permission. And that was definitely not appropriate for me to be watching. But I love
Fear was good though. That was it gave me a respect for Wahlberg that I didn't have before that, because
oh my gosh,
I was with everybody else going, oh, the Good Vibration guys is going to be like the Thriller. Awesome. We'll see how that plays out, but it ended up being pretty intense. It was actually a good movie.
Yeah, Yeah, and that movie stuck with me for
It's
a long
really
time.
not that good of a movie now,
It-
though.
I know
Watch
now,
it now.
looking at it, yeah. But
Yeah, I haven't watched it as a grown up yet, so I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
if
kind of
it'll
funny.
hold the
Yeah.
same weight.
Yeah, that movie stuck with me though for a long time. I was always like, "Oh, Fear's one of my favorites," and because of how like awful it felt to watch it, and like I don't know, it stuck with me. Misery's another one that really stuck with me.
Yeah, that one.
And but I didn't really consider myself someone who liked horror movies until really getting in, until like getting like kind of pushed into it.
Kicked off the ledge. You didn't get to that with Psycho.
You were forced into it.
Yeah.
You got to put out Psycho. You got Art the Clown. I don't know if that's fair or not.
Yeah. So, but I did have a few like those, and I loved The Birds, but was terrified of it. I still get like weary when I see birds flying in the sky, especially a big group. I'm like, yeah.
That can be fun sometimes. For us, not for her so much.
Don't give any ideas.
Have you ever watched a horror movie to try to face a phobia or a fear? Or are there any fears that you have that you just like, I can't watch, like spiders, anything, arachnophobia, any of those kind of things? Or
I have a pretty big fear of heights. And so even in movies, not even necessarily horror, but just any movie where someone's looking over the edge of a tall building and
there's a new one where they're up on that.
I haven't seen that one yet. Fall. Yeah. Even like
pretty...
the poster of that movie gives me anxiety.
Even videos where you see them and they're standing on those things and walking on this edge of walls.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
are you okay? Like, sit down here, work this out. We need to.
So even looking at that kind of thing gives me anxiety. So I'm like, I don't necessarily know if there's a horror movie that is just that fear. But I mean, there's definitely stuff that have that give you that sense of anxiety if you have that fear.
I think for me, it's always if something happens to kids or grandkids or like a spouse. Those are always, as an adult at least, those are the things that cause you the most fear anyway. So they really can bring it out of you if it's in a movie.
Yeah, that's the thing that's hard for me to watch. My biggest fear, I think, is clowns. Like irrational fear, I guess.
Clowns are scary.
Maybe it's pretty rational. I mean,
there was a real life serial
I was
killer.
gonna say, look at John Gacy. So I think we can call it rational at this point. But like clowns are probably like the first thing that comes to my mind. But seeing things happen to children is definitely a lot harder for me to watch, and oftentimes I'm like, no, I don't want to see that. That's one of the things that was hard for me to watch with the Terrifier 3 reveal. Was I was like, oh my gosh, no, not the kid from Santa. Like that was like, no, I don't want to watch that. So I think both of those, clowns and that. But I don't really.
One of the best ones to have those funny moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you need to
have something like that.
It's so traumatic and it's so intense. It's like, I mean, I need a cat to jump out now.
Yeah.
Perfect time for that.
I was surprised at how much I was able to watch Black Phone. Because that one, I really, really liked that movie. But I didn't think I'd be able to even watch it. I wasn't even planning on going.
Yeah.
I think that it turned out that there was some kind of bet or something that made me, okay, if this happens, then mom has to go see Black Phone.
It ended up being your favorite horror movie of the year.
It's one of those unique ones, and that's one of the things. I mean, I talked earlier about I enjoy the tropes as well, but there's something about seeing that scary movie that's told in a totally different way, or one that you haven't really heard before, or like that is always so awesome. And I think that's definitely one of them. Who do you think is really on top? Because there's so many great companies from A24 to Blumhouse that are and directors. Who do you think is really on it when it comes to producing some of the best newer ideas or creations?
I will say my favorite horror director working
You look
right
like you
now-
knew he was about to say it. He is having a psychic moment down here.
Yeah,
I know.
no.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
He was already mouthing it.
So he is a very he's a very underrated director right now who needs to get more popularity going, but it's Mike Flanagan.
Oh yeah.
A lot of his stuff is just Netflix. He's going to be moving to another, I think
Amazon.
Amazon is where he's
Prime.
moving to next. But he's had one.
My God.
Yeah, he's had one theatrical movie, and that was Doctor Sleep, and he needs more because
I loved he did such a great job of integrating the movie and it was really well done.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that one thoroughly. That's definitely one of my favorites. But I enjoyed the original Shining. I'm a reader. I love reading and I hate watching movies like everybody else after they've read the book because it can never be the same. But some movies are just so on such a level or pedestal for me, maybe because the director is Kubrick or whatever, but The Shining itself was such a great movie, both as a kid and scaring me, and now as an adult, and the cinematics, the cinematography, some of the other great filmmaking aspects of it. What do you think is your favorite that was great like that as a kid, but was also great on a scale like that, cinematography wise and movie wise?
Film, that's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think most of the movies that I watched, younger, that I really liked, I still really like for some of the same reasons, and so I don't know how much has changed as an adult. I mean, yes, there are different things where you pick up on different pop culture references and stuff when you're older.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, you pick up on certain things, maybe social commentary and stuff that you weren't aware of or just kind of went over your head. But when it comes to, as far as when I was a kid to now, but what I really respect is watching movies from the 70s and the 80s before I was born, and the cinematography and the atmosphere that was built back then that I feel like they're kind of getting back to a little bit with A24. I think they're doing a pretty good job with trying to make slow burn horror films.
I love movies that are shot with the camera. Yeah. That's something I hear. Speaking of bringing it back, as people complain about is the slow burn ones, because I guess we're a microwave society and everybody wants something popping, and I love those. I love when the first 3 seconds a head's rolling. That's great too. But there's also nothing like white knuckling your seat for an hour and a half and make me the train finally jumped off the track.
I think that's why Mike Flanagan's my favorite, because a lot of his movies and his shows are incredible. He's had 4 shows out right now on Netflix.
Have you seen Fall of Usher yet?
I have. Trying to get these guys to watch it so that we can review it. They just haven't yet. I absolutely.
Well, if you're gonna do it on a future show, definitely don't ruin it. But what did you think about it overall?
I thought it was great. It's not my favorite of his shows, honestly. We've done an episode on this, but there's been one thing that has gotten 100% for me, and that was The Haunting of Hill House. As far as what we've reviewed, it's a perfect show and perfect story from start to finish. His stuff is definitely slow burn, but there's definitely stuff thrown in there that that keeps you interested the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. Is I love things like that because it keeps you intrigued the entire
Mhm.
time. There's something because there's going to be a payoff. You just don't know
Yeah.
what. That's part of the exciting thing is when, what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's the part of the horror genre that's so great is if you can make a movie that's unpredictable too, because
Yeah.
there are the tropes of horror that so predictable. Oh, of course there was going to be a jump scare right there, and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But if you can make a movie where it is unpredictable and
next
unique,
level.
then it's like, okay, that jumps
Yeah.
up quite a bit. And if
Yeah.
you're also doing like a slow burn type of movie where you just don't know where it's going to go, then you got a great film. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Hopefully, some more is coming our way when it comes to that, and the holiday ones we had talked about those. Before we wrap things up, I know you guys had just had your 200th episode, so congratulations for that.
Thank
Yeah,
What
you.
else do you have coming up that you'd like to talk about? Tell everybody about, and where can they find you?
So we have a few episodes in the queue right now that we're going to be putting out. I don't know when this episode is going to drop, but we got Five Nights at Freddy's coming out soon. We've got Totally Killer. That was a Amazon Prime film
Yep.
that we're going to be.
I enjoyed that one.
You enjoyed that one?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will, we have an episode on that, and then I think for a good part of December, we're going to be doing like year end wrap up stuff. Like
Mhm.
we usually do an episode of like the worst of, the best of, and then just an episode on movies that we saw throughout the year that we didn't do a specific episode on. So kind of just like a catch-all.
Mhm.
So
Right.
that'll be some of the more under the radar stuff that maybe just went straight to streaming or didn't get a
Yeah.
big release, but we still want to kind of mention.
And
So yeah, those will be
anticipated as well.
And
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah.
most
And I think-
anticipated for 2024. We'll
Yeah.
do an
Yeah.
episode on that.
I'm talking to the guys about wanting to do a prediction
Oh yeah,
thing for Terrifier, but that would probably be a little bit later since it's not coming
Okay.
out till the end of next
Okay.
year.
yeah.
Well, feel
And-
free to tag me in anything y'all have coming up
Read a
too.
thing on that, and the director said that since Terrifier already carried a sack full of stuff and
Uh-huh.
always just wanted to do stuff
Oh,
and make people smile,
Uh-huh.
he took it to his next favorite holiday, which was Christmas.
oh,
Okay.
Oh,
Very
okay.
interesting.
Yeah, he
kind of
did have that
interesting little bit,
sack.
didn't it?
Yeah, he did have,
Yeah.
he does have that bag.
He has the
That's
bag,
true.
yeah.
That's awesome, baby. Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Little Santa mixture there. Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I know he's wanting to do some more of the classic movies too. We'll get into more of that next time. And I'd love to have you guys on again because I love talking horror movies, and we barely scratched the surface and didn't talk about anything really specifically, just kind of overall. So maybe next time we'll get more in on some specific movies. And anytime you guys want to join me again, I'd love to have you. I had a great time, and thanks for sharing your time with me.
Yeah, thank you.
That was fun.
Babe, thanks
Yeah,
for
you
being here
can
with
get
us.
us-
Thanks for contributing there at the end.
You guys can find us on we're on all the Apple or all the podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple. We're on YouTube as well. We have video as well, so you guys can
Yep.
either listen to audio on the podcasts or you can watch us on Spotify and YouTube. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter,
Whatever you want to call it.
all those places. So just
Yeah.
search Scare Talk and you'll be able to find us.
You got us.
Yeah.
That's something that's new, isn't it? You to have a presence, all the different places you have to be now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like that's a job in itself.
Yeah.
It is.
Everybody I talk to, everybody says the first thing they're going to do if they ever started making money was hire somebody to do their social media for them.
Yeah.
That's
Well, guys, hang out with me just for a second. I'll wrap this up. Thank y'all so much for being here. I really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody else, stay tuned till you know what this Chronic One is for. It's for our sponsor, SnapDragonHemp.com. Go check out them for any of your THCA flower, topicals, just about anything you need. Get them. Put in the code Chronic #1, and you will get 15% off your order. We thank them so much, and we thank you for supporting them. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being on here. Peace.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, Jerry Leonard from Greened Out Productions, here to talk to you about SnapDragonHemp.com, where all products are lab tested and 100% Farm Bill compliant, though you may not believe me once you've tried some of them. And they have everything you can think of, from tinctures to topicals to edibles to THCA flower, live concentrates, live resin, and more. Delivered straight to your door, no hat.
That's no cap.
Either way, I'm not lying. Just put in coupon code Chronic1, that's Chronic number 1, to get 15% off your next order. And don't forget, you have to be 21 years or older to put in that order.
Yeah, no more jokes for you.
Fair enough.